We have had some significant solar storm impacts over the past few days. We had the first one come in yesterday on the 31st, right at the very end of 2024. And now we've had more solar storms following right behind on January 1st, 2025. Welcome to 2025. Happy New Year, everyone. And this geomagnetic storm that started off pretty weak at G1 levels has now strengthened in the most recent KP index, a 3-hour measure of geomagnetic volatility, topped out at a 8. So that's a G4 storm. So there were estimates for a G3 storm. Some people thought perhaps it was going to be a G2. Well, we have a G3 storm from this sequence of solar storm impacts, massive magnetic field vibrations occurring at this moment in time. We see that here with our geospace delta B global map. We're looking at the change in the magnetic field. So when you see these red colors, you're at 400 nanotesla or greater. Nanotesla is a way of measuring the strength of a magnetic field. Earth's magnetic field ranges from 23,000 to 67,000 nanotesla approximately. These are 400 plus nanotesla swings, so quite significant. And look at how strong those swings are over the Americas too, specifically. Because we have the South Atlantic anomaly right here, this is an area where more of these particles can flow in addition to the polar cusp regions. But we just came out of this G4 storm. Now it's back to a G2 level, but we'll see if there's any further strengthening. But a dramatic way to bring in the new year with massive energy fluctuations on our planet, the strongest that we've had since October. We are in solar maximum right now. So we're going to do a quick breakdown as to everything that's occurring. Look at the sun so we can kind of understand what we may have coming ahead of us. So these are the magnetic field vibrations that we've had just over the past, I think this model runs for about 3 hours or so. Also over the polar cusp regions, we see them here over the poles. This is where most of the energy flows in. So you can see that you have massive magnetic field vibrations over the magnetic pole in the northern hemisphere, and then also over the magnetic pole in the southern hemisphere. And that magnetic pole is right about here for the South Pole. And for the North Pole, it is right about here or so. And in fact, there is a known supervolcano right where the north magnetic pole is at this moment in time. Now keep in mind, it's actually a south magnetic pole. The field flows inwards in the northern hemisphere, but we call it the north magnetic pole because it's in the northern hemisphere. But because that field is flowing inwards, you have all this solar energy and mass that's coming in from these solar storms and in general from the solar wind depositing in the northern hemisphere, specifically in this zone. You can see those magnetic field fluctuations created by those strong electric currents that we know can be induced down in the lithosphere, down into the mantle even, and that can trigger big changes in the Earth geophysically at depth, like for example, where there's a supervolcano. So that is just another story and another piece of this puzzle for you to think about a little bit. I have some videos on that, but we do have the north magnetic pole moving across from the Canadian flux lobe to the Siberian one right now in that Gokul supervolcano system. It looks like it's going to stay there for about 20-30 years unless there's some significant changes in the direction of movement and the acceleration of the magnetic pole in the northern hemisphere. Southern hemisphere too, really getting a lot. We see it even going up to New Zealand there, the southern part of New Zealand, parts of Australia, Tasmania, and of course also parts of the southern tip of South America. But now it's started to cool off. We had that big push of energy from the sun just about 3-4 hours ago. Let's give that real-time solar wind data a look. We can do that on our NOAA Space Weather portal here. So we go to products and data, we go to real-time solar wind, and we can check out our past 3 days of basically how the solar wind, the composition of it, the density of the plasma, the velocity of the plasma, the temperature. We can look at the different magnetic field characteristics like the total field strength. We can look at the component vectors. There's different strengths or orientations. And so here we see the total magnetic field. Let me get this set up for you. There is our G3 storm right there. So that is a value of 8. And we just came off of that because we had this new solar storm impact right here. It looks like this is its own coronal mass ejection. We had the first one come in here. We see a big jump in the total interplanetary magnetic field strength, denoted by that black line. Really jumps up, went to about 25 nanotesla or so. I mean, it has some variations, but in general was about 20 to 25. Took a dip here, and then we see that second coronal mass ejection. It looks like a second one came in right about here. They pancake together. If you have multiple of them launch in space from the sun and travel, outwards, they can pancake together. And so we had one, it looks like two, and then this third one was the real monster, because we had the total strength of the interplanetary magnetic field go up to about 24, 25 nanotesla in that zone. That's about 4 to 5 times stronger than normal, which is 5 nanotesla. Again, for reference, Earth's magnetic field at the surface is 23,000 to 67,000 nanotesla. But it decays via inverse square law. So it decays pretty rapidly as it propagates out. And so it's where Earth's magnetic field has the same strength as the interplanetary magnetic field that the two connect together. And they really connect together when the vertical component of that interplanetary magnetic field, of the solar wind, is sharply negative. This is known as the BZ component. It's denoted by this red line here. And so we see that go all the way down to negative 22, indicating a very strong connection between Earth's northward facing field and the southward facing interplanetary magnetic field. That creates a big push of the magnetopause closer to the Earth, a huge injection of this solar mass and energy, and that's what causes these massive geomagnetic vibrations that are occurring right now. We've had this slow ramp up going from the end of 2024 into 2025. Let's check out these geomagnetic pulsations, because this is data that we do not see every single day. This is fantastic, really powerful pulsations being measured out of the United Kingdom by their broadband ULF monitor here. This is measuring vibrations going from 1 to 50 millihertz. So these are periods of 2 to 1,000 seconds in length. And this right here, keep in mind, this is all still geomagnetic storming right there. We see our x-axis down here showing the time. So we have about maybe 5-6 hours of data here. I think it's about 5 hours of data. So we are still well within a G2 storm at this point. But look at what happened when that most recent, that third solar storm coronal mass ejection swept by the Earth. All of a sudden we get these geomagnetic pulsations start, and then they go absolutely bonkers. Look at that. The intensity of that is super, super high. These is also measured in nanotesla again. So we see here at the peak, this is being registered as about 30 nanotesla and then 30 nanotesla up top. So 60 nanotesla swings. And that's really, really powerful for a geomagnetic pulsation, which often is only measured at 1 nanotesla, a few nanotesla, maybe 5 nanotesla in strength. A diurnal variation where the sun passes over certain parts of the Earth. From our perspective, the Earth is rotating. That creates also changes in the magnetic field. Those diurnal variations every 24 hours are about 40 to 50 nanotesla in strength. And geomagnetic pulsations are typically about 1/10 as strong. Here they are equivalent in strength to diurnal variations. So these are extremely powerful geomagnetic pulsations being measured out of the United Kingdom near Scotland. And I'm sure that it's actually probably even stronger if you go further closer towards the Arctic Circle, like with Iceland or Svalbard. I bet there the geomagnetic pulsations are just absolutely nuts right now. Just starting to quiet down as I'm filming this live. But I'm not sure, I haven't found a public data source yet for broadband ULF monitor there. This is some pretty niche geophysical data that we're looking at, but it's really showing very clearly the effects of this G4 geomagnetic storm at this moment in time. I also want to show you our geoelectric field measurements from the same location, because this is also quite wild. Check this out. We have our view for today. And if maybe I should open this in a new tab. So one moment. Yeah, here we go. So here we have our geoelectric field, same location for today. Here we're measuring the actual electric field voltage. And this is usually measured in millivolts per kilometer. So we see that right there. And they have a few other measurements here too, magnetic field measurements. And so we're measuring the electric field in the north-south direction with this line and graphic up here, this data set, and then in the east-west direction with this data set here. So again, this is for today. So this is all already like G2, G3 storming. So you already would have an elevated geoelectric field, but check out that shock that came in from that third coronal mass ejection, massively increased the geoelectric field out of Eskademir. And we see that it goes up to about, what is this, like up to 200 or so, yeah, about 200 millivolts per kilometer up there, and then down to about negative 400. So these are massive swings in the geoelectric field being measured out of the same location. Again, very likely stronger if you go up into the Arctic Circle, Iceland, and into Svalbard, those places, you know, the very top of Siberia, the uppermost parts of Canada. And also we will see similar effects down very close to the magnetic pole in the southern hemisphere, the Antarctic Circle. So just huge energy swings happening right now at this moment in time. It's going to be really interesting to see how the Earth integrates these energies, because when you have this big push of energy come in from significant solar storms, you then have the geomagnetic storms. The magnetic field has all these variations, and then there's downstream effects of that. It takes some time for all these things to change. One of the big ones is weather systems. That is something that can have a lag time of about 24, 48 hours or so. You get changes in humidity, changes in temperature, changes in cloud cover from alterations to the global electric circuit. And those are strongest most specifically from conditions that we are experiencing right now with the solar wind. If we go back to our real-time solar wind here, we will see that very clearly. We had some pretty significant BZ. That's what you need to have these changes in weather. But look at also our plasma density and our velocity, both of them rising dramatically. Velocity getting close to 600 kilometers per second, about 550 or so about here. And then density went up even to the like 65, 78. That's ions per cubic centimeter. And so before this storm started, we were down at about 3. And then with this initial push, see this, we were down about 3 or so, 2, 3 in that zone. Then we went to about 15, 20, and we went all the way up to about 80 with that most recent push that just finished. So absolutely massive amounts of energy coming in from that solar storm. And it looks like we have more coming, because if we go to our most real-time view of the sun as it relates to sunspots, we had a bunch of sunspots rotate out. Now look at all the new sunspots that have rotated in. So we have this whole new train and sequence following behind a lot of the activity that is just now rotating out. If they remain active, we could start to have a proton storm. That's very possible. That could be another energy influence on top of this. We had about 2 weeks of increasing solar activity going from mid-December to now. And then we had a proton storm from a big eruption on the far side. Never hit warning thresholds, but elevated the amount of energy coming in for about a week plus. And now we have this long duration geomagnetic storm. And now there's new sunspots rotating in. Solar flux has stayed high. Let's check out some of our recent data there, because this energetic loading that we're going through is not ending anytime soon. Here we have our radio frequency 2800 megahertz data. This is basically the sun emits these different radio frequencies. You can measure that at certain wavelengths of light. Here we're looking at 2800 megahertz radio frequency emitted from the sun. This is November here, and this is December. So this is our latest data. We see that we ramped up at the end of November. Here's that cool off period I talked about. And here's that 2-week ramp up with our energy output from the sun. We reached these high levels here, dropped down a little bit to about 220. Still a very high value, about the same as this peak in November, you'll notice. And now we're starting to go back up again because those new sunspots have rotated through. We see that same pulse of activity measured with our monthly sunspot here. So we see that we were in this sunspot lull, huge charge up to over 250. Then as some of those sunspots rotated out, we took a dip, but now here, the beginning of 2025, the first day, we're starting to go back up again. We see the sunspots also here on our GeoNG map. They measure different vibrations and oscillations on the sun. They can get a picture of the Earth side and also the far side, so we can get a sense of what's coming. Here we see all the sunspots that exist right now on the Earth side. So you can see that there's a ton. According to Gong, there's only this big sunspot here on the far side that just rotated out. And in general, the rest is fairly clean and empty. So perhaps once these guys start to move over more towards Earth direct, we'll have some clean sun, you could say, rotate in. But we have also seen these sunspots form really quickly out of nothing, new flux being pushed out from the sun due to solar maximum. And so this could change very quickly. But as of right now, it's showing that we do have a bit of a break coming up once this starts to rotate in. But again, that is not certain by any stretch of the imagination. Now, if we look at our monthly sunspots, since the year has ended, we have our values for December. And we see that we were above our sunspot count for November. So starting to increase. The high that we had for solar cycle 25, this entire solar maximum period so far was 215.5 set in August right there. Then we see September took a drop afterwards, 141.4. Then October jumped back up 166.4. We see that spike right there. And then we had November at 152.5. And now December has been stronger at 154.5. So a very slight increase going from there to there, from November to December. But this right here, all this right there is greater than the maximum monthly sunspot count that we got for solar cycle 24, which went from 2011 or so to 2015, let's say. I mean, it's 11, 12 year cycle, but the maximum was basically 2012 to 2014, maybe even 2015. We never got above 150. For solar cycle 24. It was an anomalously weak solar cycle. That is the energy that we are used to now for the past 20 years, because you'd have to go back to solar cycle 23 and you have to go back to 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002 to get similar solar flux like we're seeing right now. So we've been in this nearly 2-decade long period where we're used to this energy, both in terms of the Earth is used to that type of energy, less energy output from the sun, also in terms of ourselves bioelectrically. And then we also see that the collective of humanity responds to changes in solar energy with things like spontaneous solar processes that occur more often during solar maximum, a spontaneous social process being like a revolution. So we are now in this new phase of heightened activity. 2025 is going to be the meat of solar cycle 25 maximum. And so we'll see if we continue to charge up from 150. We may take some dips down. This is their kind of prediction model, but all their predictions have been totally off for solar cycle 25 thus far. So I wouldn't pay any attention to the predictions that they show in these different graphics, because they really are almost meaningless. Now, another thing that we can look at too that puts us into even greater context is our total solar irradiance. This is the amount of total energy that is received here on Earth, measured in watts per square meter. We have this data going from 1962 to 2024. Here we see the different solar cycles. We see that the total solar irradiance goes up if we look at our yearly running average there. And so you see the maximum, you see the minimums. The minimums typically drop out and settle out at 1,362.9 watts per square meter. We see that very clearly, but there's variability in the maximums. So here we have solar cycle 25. We're not even done yet, of course, right? We're still in the middle of this. And we are setting a high mark for our yearly running average for total solar irradiance at 1,364.2. And you notice that line that I put in is above every other solar maximum peak going back to 1962. So we have 25, here's solar cycle 24, 23, 22, 21, 20. The only one that this probably doesn't apply to is solar cycle 19 right here, which was very, very, very strong. That's not shown in this data set, but as it relates to the total amount of energy being emitted from the sun, this is the most that we've received here on Earth and the solar system in general, going back about 50 years. No, that'd be 62 years. So tremendous amounts of energy coming in right now at this moment in time. I want to go back to our real-time data. Let's look at our KP and HP indices, because this also tells the story of the storm that we are in right now at this moment in time. We have our HB60 index, like the KP index, but it's a 1 hour measure of geomagnetic volatility. And let us zoom in here so we can really see the storm in better detail. And so here's our current HB60 index. We saw that first coronal mass ejection come in right here. You can actually see it in our geomagnetic volatility. Here's the second one, and there's the third one. Here's our 1 hour measure, actually clicked in at 9. So according to the HB60 index, we had a G5 storm for a 1 hour measure. But if you take in these other data sets, these other values around it, it drops it to an 8 for the 3 hour measure. But this spike that we had was really sharp and really sudden, and really just caused those massive geomagnetic pulsations that I showed you earlier on Earth, something that we do not see that often. Those are quite rare, and there's such a low frequency. Again, that's a broadband ULF range that we're talking about. It was 1 to 500 millihertz, very, very low, very long period waves. Those can reach very, very deep into the Earth. Even theoretically, they can interact directly to the core because they don't attenuate even through rock and mantle and things of that nature. So they're able to pierce very deeply. And basically that means the entire Earth is responding to this geomagnetic storm. So you have this solar push of energy coming in, and it causes these really strong geomagnetic pulsations that are able to maintain and retain the resonance and information even down to the core where the magnetic field is generated in the first place. And when you have a changing magnetic field, that induces electric current. So now perhaps you're also changing subtly, we don't really know, this is all very theoretical, but subtly changing the electro dynamo of the Earth itself. That is a possibility. But this is what we've been seeing with the different indices, the HB60, the the KP index. And let us look at our DST index, another measure of geomagnetic volatility. This one we can see also a really big drop down to negative 200. For reference, the Mother's Day storm of 2024, that went down to negative 412. So this is a weaker storm than that, but still significant drop down to negative 200, and at a time normally when we don't get strong geomagnetic storms because we just had solstice. There's something known as the Russell-McFerrin effect, and that means what they've observed is that we get stronger geomagnetic storms during the equinox periods due to the preferential alignment of Earth's magnetic field, and you get weaker storms during solstice. And we just had solstice in December, and we are still having a strong geomagnetic storm to bring in 2025. Very much, in my opinion, a sign of what we have for the year ahead, and perhaps even into 2026 as well. So really quite a lot happening, and that's not the only thing. We talked about sunspots, but we can also look at our sun itself. We have our 195 angstrom view of the sun here. You'll notice these really big coronal holes. And so we haven't had any significant solar flares in the past, let's say 24 hours, maybe 36 hours. Though solar flux is still very high, but now we have these coronal holes on the sun that are rotating through Earth direct. They emit these high-speed streams. And so the solar wind is going to get enhanced following these solar storm impacts by these high-speed streams. They're also going to sweep by the Earth, creating more geomagnetic instability that follows. So again, we've been in this really big energy loading period that is not going to end anytime soon. It looks like this at least will take us into about mid-January, and by then we'll have those sunspots that are rotating out start to rotate back in again. And so it seems that we're in a new phase of solar activity with solar cycle 25 maximum. Now I wanted to mention I have a website, wildfreeorganic.com, where I sell different holistic wellness products, and these energies can be quite stressful on the body, depending on your own individual health and wellness and your health and wellness practices. And I have a product known as herb coffee, which is 50% coffee, but the other 50% is made up of chaga mushroom, roasted dandelion root, roasted chicory root. And what we see with the research, and just anecdotally, is that geomagnetic storms will activate your sympathetic nervous system and spike cortisol. So if you're someone that likes to drink coffee, it's probably not the best idea to be drinking coffee during a geomagnetic storm or in general during a energetic increase on Earth. So herb coffee is great because it's only 50% coffee, and then the other parts in it, the roasted dandelion root, the roasted chicory root, the chaga mushroom, they have that same flavor as coffee. They're very supportive of your overall health and wellness, your digestive system, your cardiovascular system, your autonomic nervous system. So you can have your coffee effectively and drink it too. This is on the website wildfreeorganic.com/store. I have a link in the video description. But this is really, like, I had a cup of this today because I didn't want full strength coffee because I knew we were in a G3, G4 storm, but I still wanted to have something in the morning. I like the flavor of it. This stuff is awesome. There's almost no difference in flavor, and it's really, really tasty. And I would highly recommend you pick some up if you like your coffee and you want to drink it too during these periods of enhanced energy volatility. So that is everything that we have happening right now energetically. We just got out of this massive push. We'll see how the Earth continues to respond going forward. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm wishing you a great 2025. If you like this sort of video, then hit that like button, smash it, and I will keep you up to date. So if you'd like to stay appraised, then please subscribe to the channel. I release updates practically daily as to what's happening energetically here on Earth, and not just talking about the sun or Earth geophysical energies, but also we look at the solar system, we look at the cosmos, some of these influences, and really identify what the dominant energy that's influencing us at any given time is on this channel. So love to see you around. Join the Soul Tribe, and yeah, wishing you a great 2025, wishing you lots of health, love, abundance, and all the great things, and I'll see you all in a future video. So yeah, welcome and ciao.